Tomorrow, the Senate is expected to acquit President Trump in his impeachment trial. It comes after the Democratic House managers and president's legal team gave their closing remarks on Monday. Afterwards, senators spoke on the chamber floor to explain why they're voting to remove the president or keep him in office. Many derided what they say is the highly partisan nature of this impeachment process. Now all eyes are on what the party composition of that vote may be. 3 Democrats reportedly weighing to break from their party and acquit the president. All 3 come from states where President Trump won in 2016. On the other side of the aisle, the votes for 2 Republican senators are still unclear. Senators Susan Collins and Mitt Romney both joined Democrats in their failed bid to call witnesses in the impeachment trial. Senator Collins is under particular scrutiny because she's up for re-election in a state that voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. Here to break it all down is Paul Kane on Capitol Hill. He's a congressional reporter for the Washington Post. Paul, I want to start with Collins and Romney. Is there any sense as to whether or not they'll vote to remove the president tomorrow?
I think we're going to learn more about that later today. I think there's a decent chance that Senator Collins will make her announcement this afternoon in a speech as the sort of speechathons are being given all day long and into tomorrow. But I think Senator Collins will announce at some point later today. And Senator Romney, I'm not sure of the timing on there. Honestly, right now, I think it's unlikely that Senator Collins will vote to convict. She's up for election in November. She needs to keep some sense of the base with her, and if she votes to convict, it will infuriate Trump. There are a lot of Trump supporters in Maine, not a majority. Hillary Clinton won there and Obama won there twice, but there are a lot of Trump supporters that she needs to keep in her corner. And I think she's going to try and split the difference with essentially saying she voted for more witnesses. She wanted to hear more testimony. But once that was blocked, you're not really going to have a whole opportunity to have a full case. And how do you convict if you don't have a full trial? I'm guessing that's where she's headed.
We also mentioned the Democrats who are still trying to figure out whether or not they want to acquit the president. I want to play for you some sound from West Virginia's Joe Manchin, who's floating the idea of censure, a censure resolution, as an alternative to removal.
I see no path to the 67 votes required to impeach President Trump and haven't since this trial started. However, I do believe a bipartisan majority of this body would vote to censure President Trump for his actions in this manner. Censure would allow this body to unite across party lines and as an equal branch of government to formally denounce the president's actions and hold him accountable. His behavior cannot go unchecked by the Senate, and censure would allow a bipartisan statement condemning his unacceptable behavior in the strongest terms.
So do Manchin's comments give you the sense that he's probably moving towards a vote for, unlikely to vote for conviction tomorrow?
He probably is the biggest wild card right now of the entire Senate. I mean, he enjoys a fairly close relationship with Trump, at least in terms of as a Democrat that has any sort of relationship with Trump. And I think if he votes to convict on either of the 2 articles, it could really put that relationship at some serious danger. I mean, Trump doesn't really like it when even Republicans give him any sort of heartache. But the censure thing is his sort of fallback answer right now. It's not really gaining any steam up here. Everybody is sort of dismissing it as Manchin's way of trying to find some sort of middle ground for representing a very pro-Trump state.
So Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski was thought to be on the fence regarding witnesses before finally coming down against them. In her comments yesterday, she suggested the House could pursue censure. I want to play for you what she had to say about censure.
The response to the president's behavior is not to disenfranchise nearly 63 million Americans and remove him from the ballot. The House could have pursued censure and not immediately jumped to the remedy of last resort. I cannot vote to convict. The Constitution provides for impeachment, but does not demand it in all instances.
So I know you said that there's not bipartisan support for censure. So why are we seeing a number of Republican senators publicly criticize the president's actions? What do they really have to gain if they won't vote for censure at this point?
I think Murkowski there is really just trying to voice her entire displeasure with everything that's happened. She felt, she told me on Friday that it was the saddest day of her entire time in the Senate. She was angry at everyone. She was angry at the House, the Senate, Democrats, Republicans, and I think that's what she was trying to voice there. I think what she felt is if the process had begun with censure and not jumped all the way to impeachment, in that regard, she would have been happier with the entire process. But instead, faced with impeachment and conviction and removing him from office, it's just too high a bar. But right now, I don't know if she would vote for censure or not. It's still up in the air. I think Mitt Romney is really the only Republican who might vote to convict Trump, and that's because he is in a political situation that everybody dreams of. He is beloved back in Utah, and he just won election a year ago. So he might be the only one right now that would vote to convict. There might be one or two others who would vote for censure, but that's just, they're never going to get to a censure vote. So it's kind of a moot point.
So the political calculus you're saying that affects a lot of other Senate Republicans doesn't really affect Romney in that way. Paul, you write in the Washington Post that the Senate will emerge from the impeachment trial guilty of extreme partisanship. I want to read for you the following from your piece. You say, when the verdict is rendered with a public roll call Wednesday, the trial will serve as a 3-week microcosm of the modern Senate. It has become a completely top-down institution in which the rank-and-file senators feel marginalized, if not completely ignored. And the days of ad hoc bipartisan groups helping cool political passions have vanished. Boy, Paul, that is such a depressing outlook. How has the Senate changed? How has this trial represented that?
Well, think back to 1999 when they had the impeachment trial then, and Trent Lott was the Republican leader, Tom Daschle was the Democratic leader. It ended on one of the article votes of impeachment. The trial ended 50-50, a really symbolic number of, and where we were about to go as a nation with the Bush-Gore presidential race and sort of where politics continue to be today, 50-50. But the Senate came out of that fight unified. They felt like it was a good process, that everybody had a fair shake. On the final day of the trial, they actually passed a resolution thanking and honoring the Chief Justice, Rehnquist. He got an ovation from the Senate. You're not going to have that tomorrow afternoon. Democrats have been attacking the legitimacy of Chief Justice Roberts for the trial. You've got now that the entire process was run by Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer, and it was almost designed by both to end up in this same spot where Republicans got no witnesses and Democrats feel like they got talking points for their 2020 campaigns, but nobody really got to the bottom of what a few of these people know about this Trump-Ukraine issue. And, I think the voters are all left wanting more and not getting it.
So Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell addressed tomorrow's impeachment vote on the floor today. Here's what he said about a vote to quit is one to protect the common good.
We must vote to reject the House abuse of power, vote to protect our institutions, vote to reject new precedents that would reduce the framers' design to rubble, vote to keep factional fever from boiling over and scorching our republic. I urge every one of our colleagues to cast the vote the facts, the evidence, the Constitution, and the common good clearly require. Vote to acquit the president of these charges.
I know Democrats might not want to give him the credit, but there have been moments over the course of McConnell's career where he says, at some point, we might not be the majority. We've got to look at how what we implement and do will affect us going into the next presidential cycle. But do you see either Mitch McConnell or even Chuck Schumer working together to bridge that divide?
No, one of the remarkable things about this trial was just how little senators talked amongst each other about what was happening. They just didn't have, there were none of those sort of ad hoc groups that would form periodically in past debates about whether it was immigration or even the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh a year and a half ago. None of that happened. It was really controlled by the two leaders. And it's just a remarkably different way than things have worked in the past. It just really, the power that those two have right now is just unparalleled in recent history, and it just doesn't bode well for trying to figure out ways where you can get some sort of bipartisan solutions on important issues. It really is historically just not a normal situation.
It's just very difficult, especially covering this day in and day out as you do, to see this happen. I'm just curious, Paul, you've got John Bolton's book coming out. You've got Lev Parnas saying, I'm willing to talk. His information slowly leaking out, damaging information against the president. Are any senators concerned about how their vote could come back to haunt them, both Democrat and Republican?
I do think that there is some level of Susan Collins, I think, has a lot of concern. She's in a tough re-election race up in Maine. A few of the other Republicans who are in tough re-election battles, they just don't seem to have that same fear. I think they just are operating from a premise where the first thing they need to do is to just check the partisan base and try and make sure that they have their Republicans supporting them. And, consequences be damned. Yeah, John Bolton is telling his story. We're watching it slowly sort of unfold. He is going to tell his story somewhere. Maybe it'll be on CBSN, maybe it'll be in the Washington Post, maybe it'll be on 60 Minutes or in a book that he's trying to publish. But it's going to come out. More stuff is going to come out. They are going to continue to face questions about it, but right now they just aren't as worried about it. And some of them have just said, look, I think he's guilty of everything they've essentially charged him with, but that's still not enough to remove him from office.
And you're right, Paul, when Bolton speaks publicly on television, it should be on some sort of a Viacom CBS platform, whether 60 Minutes or CBSN. Paul Kane with the Washington Post. Thank you so much, my friend.
With a preview in the Washington Post.
Deal. Get Bolton on the phone now, my friend.
Yes.
Thank you, Paul Kane.
Yes.